We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast, brought to you by our great friends at Alumni Hall. And with Georgia football set to kick off fall camp tomorrow, football's back, baby, and I am freaking excited about it. So with that in mind, in honor of that, today we're going to take a deep dive into Georgia's biggest position battles leading into fall camp that will play out over the course of the next month or so. So we're going to have a ton of fun with that, guys. But before we get there, don't forget, everything that we do here on this channel is designed for all of you diehard Georgia fans. So if you fit that description, go ahead. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Turn those notifications on. If you enjoy the video, like, comment, all that stuff, guys. It's a huge help as we continue to grow this channel. And I greatly, greatly appreciate all of your support. But all right, let's dive in. And look, guys, generally speaking, I'm a happy guy. I love life. Life is good. But today, I'm in an especially good mood, y'all. I am. Because as far as I'm concerned, football's back. It's back. And look, I know that some of you don't agree with that assessment because technically we don't have games to watch this weekend and not for a couple of weeks. Week 0 is what, like August 23rd, so we're a couple of weeks away from that. So I know that not everyone looks at it the way that I do. But just let me have this, guys. Please, just let me have this because the college football offseason, you guys know it's long and it gets dark sometimes. We all love college football season. We live for this. But when it gets here, it's here for like 3 or 4 months and then poof, it's gone. And then we got like 8 months of just like a wasteland, a college football-less wasteland. But that's in our rear view, guys. We don't have to worry about that because for me, football is here, and we have been busy, guys, previewing the 2025 season over the course of this summer. Got a ton of videos we put out for you guys, a ton of stuff on the audio site, which you can go check out as well, wherever you get your podcast. So if you missed any of that, go back and check on that stuff, guys. And we got a lot more coming your way, but fall camp is on our doorstep. And fall camp is where all the major position battles will be decided. And yeah, sure, like some position battles will somewhat carry over into the season, but the reality is somebody has got to open the season as the starter at all 22 positions on Georgia's football team when we open the season against Marshall here in a couple of weeks. So with fall camp starting tomorrow, I'm going to break down Georgia's biggest position battles heading into the start of fall camp. And I'm excited, man. Again, I am pumped for this. And when you look at Georgia's position battles on the surface, it's kind of a weird situation. It's kind of strange this year because on one hand, you look at Georgia's roster in 2025 and you look at the offseason narrative surrounding this Georgia football team. And the reality is Georgia lost a ton of production from last year's team, whether that's to the NFL draft, graduation, transfer portal, the trifecta there. But we lost a ton of production, however you want to slice that. I mean, according to ESPN's Bill Connolly, Georgia is dead last in the entire SEC in returning production, only returning 46% of our overall team production from last year. But honestly, despite that, when I look at this roster and I look at each position heading into fall camp, personally, I don't see a ton of positions that are wide open. I don't, okay? I don't. Because a big part of that is we do a great job at Georgia. Number one, of winning games. But how do you win games? Well, you develop talent, right? And we do a great job developing talent. In recent years, we've done a really good job of getting young guys on the field, guys that we think can help us. Even if they're not starting, they're getting some reps, getting opportunities like Chris Cole last year, right? And a part of that is also, like in the day and age of NIL, the transfer portal, it's harder to build depth than maybe it was back in 2021, right? So we're in a position where we're having to play guys earlier in their careers, probably earlier than they're ready, as Kirby has said a couple of times. But the benefit of that is like, okay, yeah, you take your bumps when they got to play early, but that gets them ready a little faster. It accelerates their development. So I think we actually have a really good idea about most positions on the team. We have guys ready to step up into new roles, guys are kind of the heir apparents at certain positions. And we also have gone through spring practice. And, when you go through spring practice, you go through a couple of weeks of that, you go through G-Day, you certainly gain some insight there. So we're not flying completely blind into fall camp in terms of like, okay, who's going to start here? Who's going to start there? But as we enter fall camp here tomorrow, there are still some position battles that I do think are fairly wide open. Certainly some more than others, and those are the ones that we're going to focus on here today. This is not a position-by-position breakdown because we've done that really all through the offseason, guys. Basically, every position out there, I've done a position unit breakdown, whether it's a video here on the YouTube channel or on the audio side. You can go back and check all those out. So today, I want to focus on those positions where I do think the battles are relatively wide open. And we're going to start on the defensive side of the football. We'll work our way to the offense. And defensively, really, there are 3 spots that I'm looking at that I think the position battles are relatively wide open. And they all just happen to be in the Georgia secondary. So let's start with the cornerback position. And look, now we got 2 cornerbacks, right? We know football. We know how this works. One of those spots is locked up. Dalen Everett is going to start for Georgia at one of the corners. Okay, that's a fact. That is going to happen. Dalen was not available, didn't really do anything during the spring, but he's also going to year 3 as a starter. And Dalen, hasn't always been elite in his career. He was, as a young guy, was developing, as young guys tend to do. But Dalen really kind of flipped the switch about halfway through last year. Maybe that Texas game, right? He has the sack fumble and the cat blitz, and then he got an interception there, got another interception in the SEC championship game. Dalen started to take his game to another level the back half of last year. His ball skills improved. He's always been a really physical corner there in the perimeter run game, perimeter screen game. Always been a really good athlete. But it's, it's the ball skills. It's developing those ball skills at the college level. That kind of was a work in progress for him. But he showed signs of taking that game to the next level the back half of last year. I think was one of the better corners in the SEC by the end of the season. And so I fully expect Dalen Everett to be one of the better corners, maybe not just in the SEC, but maybe even nationally this year. So he's got one spot on lockdown. No questions there. It's the other cornerback spot, however, that I think is relatively wide open. Now, saying that, we do have an incumbent starter of sorts at that corner spot in Daniel Harris, but not exactly. If you remember back to last year, let's recap that real quick. It was Julian Humphrey to start the season. We all know how that worked out, right? I'm not here to bash anyone. I don't want to, I don't really want to catch strays here, but let's just say the Julian Humphrey experiment at Georgia just didn't work, okay? It just didn't work. And he lost his job the back half, not even the back half, the last third of last year. Daniel Harris started the last 4 games for Georgia at cornerback. And we know Julian Humphrey is now transferred out. He's gone to Texas A&M. He's a Texas kid, and that's where he's back in his home state. So good luck to him. I wish him the best, but he is not going to be a factor for Georgia at corner any longer. So Harris is returning as a guy who started the last 4 games for Georgia. And I thought he was up and down. But I do think that he was better than Humphrey. The thing with Julian Humphrey last year, guys, and I don't want to make this a Julian Humphrey thing because he's not on the team anymore, but it's kind of like illustrating where Daniel Harris gave us some improvement last year. Julian was most of the time in phase with receivers. Rarely did Julian Humphrey just get burned out there. He was in phase and hit pockets, did a good job there, was a good athlete. Where Julian Humphrey struggled was with ball skills. It's forever seared into my brain. I don't think I will ever get it out of my brain, the image of him just helplessly flailing through the air in that Alabama game on that go-ahead touchdown for Alabama to Ryan Williams, man. Again, go back and watch the play. He's there. He's there in position, in phase, turn around, make a play on the ball. He was just incapable of it. Just couldn't do it, right? And that's where I think Daniel Harris gave us some improvement at the end of last year. He was by no means perfect. He got beat a number of times last year, but he also won more of those battles than Julian Humphrey did. He showed me better ball skills than Julian Humphrey ever did at Georgia, and that was encouraging. It was something to build off of. So he was certainly, essentially a redshirt freshman, as a guy getting his first real playing time at Georgia, was not perfect. Certainly a guy that's still growing, developing, all of those things. But what I saw from him at the end of last year was encouraging in terms of him being a guy that can come into this year and maybe take that next step. Because here's the thing with Daniel Harris, guys. The physical tools are off the freaking charts, man. This guy is 6'3", 195 pounds with ridiculous length. We're talking about his knuckles almost dragging on the ground. Obviously that's hyperbole, but you get the point. The guy's length is insane. 6'3" with incredibly long arms, great wingspan, and that's part of why he showcased better ball skills than Julian Humphrey, because he's just got a bigger wingspan, right? He can get to more balls than Julian ever could. So that's a great starting point. Where Daniel has got to continue to improve is route recognition, okay, first and foremost. Sometimes I just think he got fooled by routes and route combinations, but that comes being a young cornerback, right? And I do expect him to take a big step in that regard this year. That's one of those things like you can absolutely improve going into maybe like your second year-ish as a starter for Georgia. I'd like to see him improve there. I think his hips aren't bad. I have some question. There's ability to like to flip his hips and run. The length is there. I like his top end speed. Good athleticism, but there were some times last year against some maybe smaller, shiftier guys where they would just get in and out of their breaks and he just couldn't keep up with them. And that's somewhat of a concern for me. So there's a lot to like about Daniel Harris, but there are still some concerns there. And he was a guy going to spring who opened the spring as a starter and worked he got most of the reps with the number one defense during the spring, but he was not alone in getting reps with the number one defense. So that is why I'm including this position on my position battles list, because there are a couple other guys that have a chance, that the window is at least open for them to make a move this spring. And those two guys that I'm looking at right now going to fall camp are Ellis Robinson IV and DeMello Jones, two second-year guys for Georgia who really didn't play much on the field at all last year. Didn't really get many opportunities, but have high levels of potential. Both those guys. Now, you'd probably know Ellis Robinson's background. If you don't, if you're not familiar with that, he was the number 2 recruit in the country in the 2024 recruiting class. The only guy ranked higher than him in last year's recruiting class was Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, the receiver. Then you know how good that guy was. So Ellis Robinson comes to Georgia with an incredibly high pedigree, okay? But the issue for Ellis, the reason he was not able to get on the field last year, in my estimation, was the lack of physicality in his game. He is an elite cover guy. I think there's a strong argument to be made right now that he's probably the best pure cover guy on our team. But he's 6 foot, 180 pounds. Now, I have heard through the grapevine this offseason for some people I trust that he's gotten his body in better shape. He's added some good weight, gotten stronger, and that's encouraging. But I'm still in like wait and see mode on that. I liked what I saw from Ellis this spring. I thought he looked more physical out there. I thought he did look a little bigger when I saw him at practice, when I saw him at G-Day. But that's the question. It's not a question of can Ellis cover somebody. Is Ellis a good enough athlete to play in the SEC? Zero questions there. The question is, can you step up and play with physicality against the perimeter run game, the perimeter screen game? Because you have to do that in this day and age of college football, because teams will exploit that, because that's a big part of a lot of offense out there. RPOs, screen game is a big part of offensive football these days. And it's something that our coaches demand. If you're not a willing and capable tackler on the perimeter, you are not going to play cornerback for Georgia. It's as simple as that. And that's why I believe Ellis did not get more opportunities than he did last year. He got a couple of snaps against Mississippi State, but not much beyond that. I was hopeful that maybe that would be the sign that he's going to be more of a factor, and it really wasn't the rest of the way. So Ellis is supremely athletic, supremely gifted. It's just a matter of him increasing his physicality. And I'm hopeful that he can do that. And look, I know a lot of you out there are like, well, dude, a corner's job is to cover guys. Like who cares if he's not physical enough? Yeah, okay, you can say that, but then when a team throws a screen and Ellis completely whiffs on a tackle and they take a 2-yard screen pass for 60 yards for a touchdown and we lose the game because of that, you might be seeing a different story. So I get it. I understand the frustration there because this guy was such a highly recruited guy and is such a great cover player, but you got to be a total player out there. And I'm hopeful that Ellis is going to be able to be that for us this year. And if he increases his physicality and our coaches get to the point where they trust him out there in the perimeter screen game, the perimeter run game, then all bets are off, man. He might very well be that guy. I thought he looked good this spring. I thought he looked good at G-Day. So he's very, very much in this battle, in the picture here. And then the other guy, I think it's very much lost in the shuffle. People talk about Ellis Robinson because he was that highly rated of a guy coming to high school. But DeMello Jones, a Georgia kid out of Swainsboro, I think sometimes gets forgotten about in this conversation. And he's another guy that got reps with the number one defense during the spring. Not a ton, not as many as Harris, really not as many as Ellis did, but got reps. And I'm telling you guys, this dude is an athlete. He's just a football player. 6'1", 185. I think when you look at him out there on the field, he's kind of a nice cross between Harris and Robinson, okay? So he's not quite as tall and long as Harris is, but he's maybe a little bit taller and longer than Ellis is. He might not be as physical as Harris is out there on the perimeter, because Harris showed, I mean, there's a play in the Florida game, right? Harris lit somebody up, but he's more physical than Ellis Robinson is at this point. At least he showed that when he's been on the field at times. So he's kind of a nice cross there. And he's just, guys, I'm just telling you, he's a football player. This guy is a really, really good athlete, good cover guy. I thought he did some great things this spring when I was able to watch him. I thought he did some good things at G-Day. So I think he's more in the picture here, more in the conversation than maybe the average Georgia fan thinks going into fall camp, going into the season. But if I had to handicap it right now, the favorite to win this job, to emerge from fall camp as the starter at that corner spot, would still be Daniel Harris. I mean, he didn't really do anything. He wasn't bad during the spring. I thought he did some really good things. And that's the thing, guys. Like, I think whoever emerges as the guy at this cornerback spot, we're going to be in really good hands, because these are three good players. I feel good about all these guys. So I love the competition here. Iron sharpens iron. You hear that cliche all the time, but it's very, very much true. So I'm excited to see how this plays out over the course of the next month and see who emerges as that guy going into the season. And this might be one of those spots where a couple of them, maybe two, maybe even all three of them, get reps early in the season. And we have the luxury of doing that when you have Marshall and Austin Peay open this season. So maybe they all play like meaningful snaps. And it's a series-by-series rotation potentially to open the season. And we'll see how they perform. And then as we get into the meat of our schedule, Tennessee week 3, Alabama coming in late September, then we'll see like who do we trust out there on a down-by-down basis. But I like all three of these guys, and whoever wins the job, I do think that we are going to be in very, very good hands. All right, moving back to the safety position. Next up here, I really, really do like Ja'Cory Thomas. And this is similar to that cornerback battle. Ja'Cory Thomas, I think, at least coming to fall camp, is the presumptive starter there. But I think his hold on that position is tenuous right now. He does not have that position locked down the way that KJ Bolden does with that other safety spot. But when you look at Ja'Cory Thomas, I think it's a very similar situation to a guy that became a very good football player for Georgia a couple years back, and that's Chris Smith. I think their career arcs are very similar coming into this season for Ja'Cory Thomas. So let's recap where Ja'Cory is in his career. So he's a guy 6 foot, 200 pounds. This is year 4. Year 4 for Ja'Cory at Georgia. He stayed the path. He's not transferred out. Could have transferred out, but he stuck it out. He put his head down, didn't complain, didn't become a locker room cancer, just worked hard. And that's exactly what Chris Smith did his first couple years, right? So if you look at Ja'Cory's first 2 years, didn't do much on the field. Got very few opportunities. In garbage time, a few here and there, but not much. But then last year, got 3 starts, and those were due to injuries. And I guess this, I think, actually, no, it was not suspension for him. It was just due to injury there. The first game, Janelle Aguero was going to be the guy at star, and he comes out with a little bit of an illness to start the season, and Ja'Cory steps in there and starts the game against Clemson. Didn't actually play a ton against Clemson, but got the start there against the Tigers. Ended up getting 3 starts, Clemson, Florida, and UMass last year. So he got more opportunities than he had his first 2 years on campus. And I thought he did a really good job when he got those opportunities. And if you look at like Chris Smith a couple years back, what did Chris Smith do? His first 2 years on campus, he sat, just like Ja'Cory Thomas. What did he do? He put his head down, didn't complain. He just went to work, developed, got better. A lot like Ja'Cory Thomas. And like Ja'Cory Thomas, year 3, when Richard LeCounte goes down, that was a motorcycle injury, if I remember correctly. He gets an opportunity late that year and starts the last couple games of the season and never looked back. Never looked back. And like physically, measurables, pretty similar stuff there. So this could very much be a situation that we saw with Chris Smith a couple years back, right? So Ja'Cory's a guy that's been in our system for a long time. Certainly not the most athletic player we have in our secondary. Not the highest NFL potential, not the highest ceiling, none of that. But the guy can play. The guy knows our defense. He's been in the system this is his 4th year now, and trust is a big part of the puzzle, especially back there at safety, guys. It's a huge, huge thing for Kirby Smart and company. If they can't trust you at safety, you're probably not going to play. And I'd be hard-pressed to say there's another player on the roster that's vying for that safety position that the coaches have more trust in back there than Ja'Cory Thomas. So that's why I think right now, certainly going to fall camp, he is the presumptive guy there. But again, I don't think that he has separated himself so much from the pack that other guys do not have an opportunity at safety. So who are those guys that are pushing Jacory at that safety spot? Well, it's 3 transfers that we brought in from the portal over the offseason. And I'm going to start with a guy that I pointed out earlier in the week with my top 5 impact transfers. He was number 5 on my list. I felt good about 4. 5 was a little bit of a reach. But we're going to start with Zion Branch here. Zion is a big, athletic, physical safety. 6'2", 210 pounds. Physically, he's just a better specimen than Jacory Thomas is. Like, there's just zero question there, guys. He's faster, he's bigger, he's more physical. That's just reality. But Jacory does obviously have a pretty significant edge there in terms of knowledge of our system and having the coach's trust. That's what makes it hard for a transfer, especially at that safety position. But Branch physically has got the goods. Now, at USC, he never really produced all that much. But as I said earlier in the week, that had nothing to do with talent, had nothing to do with ability. He's actually going to year 4. It's like Jacory Thomas. He's going to year 4 of college football. Not in Georgia's system, but he's been around college programs for a long time, right? He's been in meeting rooms for a long time, been watching film for a long time. He's heard terminology. I know our terminology is probably different, but he's heard, college football lingo for quite some time. So he's got a chance here, guys. If you look at his 3 years at USC, they were all injuries, like all injury related. His first year, it was a lower body injury in fall camp that cost him the entire year as a freshman. Second year, about halfway through the year, suffered a lower body injury that cost him the rest of the year. And then he started last year with a hand injury that cost him some games. So it was just an injury-plagued USC career for Zion Branch. But I'm telling you, if you've seen this guy up close in person, physically, he is a dude. He's the kind of guy, like when you see him in person for the first time, you're like, who is that? Who is that guy? Because he looks the part. So I'm excited, man. And it's hard for me to project Zion as being a guy who's going to win this battle because the reality is, I'm just going to be honest with you, I have not seen enough of him. Because who has? He's been banged up his entire career. I saw him at G-Day, saw him during the spring at practice a couple times, and I was impressed with what I saw there, but that's not enough for me right now to go as far as saying I think he's going to win that job. What I can say is I think he's got a shot. All right, just put that out there. And then Jaden Harris is another guy we brought in as a transfer at the safety spot. Another 4th-year guy. The difference between Harris and Branch is that Harris actually has more experience on the field. He started all 13 games for Miami a year ago. But the issue there for Harris is that, okay, yeah, cool, he started 13 games, has more experience, but that also means we've seen what he looks like more in the field. And he struggled last year, guys. I'm just going to be honest with you. He struggled. He's got talent. He's athletic. He'll hit you. All those things are true about him. But he could not cover to save his life last year, guys. I'm just going to be real. Some of it was just like mental bust. Sometimes he just got beat. He struggled at Miami. It was not a great look for him last year. But maybe you come over to Georgia, change the scenery, new program, new coaches. I would say probably better defensive coaches than what he had last year in Miami. So maybe this could be a year where it all clicks for Jaden Harris. Again, I think the athleticism, the tools are there. It's just a matter of getting that out of him. So he's kind of a wild card here. I do think he's got some physical skills, but can he improve on what he showed last year? I don't know, but he does have some experience, which is something that Zion Branch really doesn't have much of in his career at all. And then the other guy that we brought from the transfer portal in the secondary is Adrian Maddox, who's been in a number of schools. So started at Alabama State at a high school, then transferred to Temple, then was at UAB last year, now at Georgia. This is his 4th school. And I really like this guy. 6'3", 200 pounds, not quite as big and put together as Zion Branch, but not that far off. He actually, when I saw him play at practice and at G-Day this spring, he was getting more reps at star than he was at safety, but he cross-trained a little bit there, so we'll throw him in here in this conversation. Don't forget, this is a guy in Adrian Maddox that was pretty well sought after coming out of the transfer portal. He actually committed to Florida before he committed to Georgia, and then 2 days later he flips to Georgia. So we weren't the only school after. It's not like this is some scrub from UAB that we just, all right, we'll take a flyer on. Other SEC schools out there, high-profile schools out there, were after this guy. And when you watch him on tape at UAB, this is a guy that will straight up light you up. Like, physicality is his game. And that's why I think he got more reps at star. Because at star, like, what do you need to be? You're kind of a hybrid DB, linebacker. And with his size at 6'3", 200 pounds, and his ability to just, again, light you up, to bring the wood, he's a great fit at that position. He can also play safety as well. I would put Harris and Branch ahead of him at safety right now, but I don't want to completely discount him from the conversation because he did do some cross-training at star and safety during the spring. So those are your contenders at star, trying to push Corey Thomas, who is, again, the presumptive guy that will likely come out of the fall as the starter at safety. But again, I think it's a tenuous hold. He hasn't really locked down that spot fully yet. And I think the window is open for these three transfers to have a shot to win that job this fall. And then speaking of the star position, let's go there next. So another position like corner, like safety, where I think we have a guy that I would categorize as a presumptive starter, as like in some ways you can call him an incumbent starter. Didn't start every game last year, but he did start 5 games for us, and that is Janelle Aguero, who I absolutely loved coming out of high school. Those of you who've been with the podcast for a long time, you know I was talking this guy up coming out of high school. I thought he had a shot to maybe win that job at some point his true freshman year. Didn't work out that way. But last year, I thought he showed some clear progress. And let's not forget Janelle Aguero's prep ranking. And I know rankings aren't everything. I get that, guys. But go back and you watch tape from high school. Like, yeah, the dude was the real deal at the high school level. I know this is a different level, but at high school, like, he looked the part. He's a former top 50 guy, a fringe five-star, depending on what service you look at. Some services had him as a 5-star. But at 5'11", 205 pounds, and a very well put together 205 pounds, the reason I was so high on him coming out of high school is I felt and still feel as though he is the prototype that Georgia is looking for at the star position in our defense. Why do I say that? Because again, in our defense, the star defender is a hybrid DB linebacker. You've got to be able to hold up in coverage effectively enough against some of those faster, shiftier, speedier slot receivers, but you also have legitimate run-fit responsibilities in the box. Like, you're going to actually be taking on real legit offensive linemen at times on certain downs, guys. So you've got to be physical enough to hold up with those run fits. So that's why you got to be kind of that hybrid player. And those body types are really difficult to find. They are. They're hard to find. And I know coming into this year, the knock on Janelle, the question people have about him, and I think it's fair to a degree, is can he hold up in coverage? Physically, he will saw you in half. Absolutely. At G-Day, or not at fall camp last year, I was able to go to a fall camp practice last year, as a lot of you guys know. And one thing that stood out to me with Janelle was like, oh my God, this guy is just like literally cutting people in half. The physicality is there in spades. So I have zero question about that. I don't think anybody really should. But the question that's out there is, can he cover effectively in space against some of those shiftier, faster slot receivers, especially when you can't get hands on them when they're playing the slot, when they're playing off the line of scrimmage. That makes that job tougher, right? I do think that's a fair question because there were struggles for him at times last year doing that. And that's why he only started 5 games for us. And we went to our third down dime package. We subbed him out and we would put Malachi Starks in that star position. You bring Dan Jackson or KJ Bolden off the bench, and they would be our 2 safeties in most of our dime packages as the season progressed, because we felt more comfortable with Malachi covering there in the slot than we did with Janelle Aguero. So there are some very real questions about that. But what I can tell you, this is anecdotal because I didn't see every rep this spring, but the reps I did see of Janelle Aguero in coverage this spring, be it at practice or G-Day, I was highly encouraged by what I saw. And I know if you were at G-Day, yes, he did get beat on a couple of slot fades. I think Zachariah Branch got him on one. If I remember correctly, it was Jeremy Bell that also got him on one, who I love Jeremy Bell. I'm excited to see what that guy can do for us this year. But that's neither here nor there. It's not a part of this episode. So yeah, he got beat on a couple of those. But I know you can't go back and watch it because ridiculously it wasn't on TV. But if you're there in the stadium, you saw this, right? If you're watching closely. Yeah, he got beat on those plays and the ball was completed for big gains, but he was in position. He was in phase, running with some of the faster, more explosive guys on our team. All right. So if you have questions about Janelle Aguero in coverage, it should not be questions related to his athleticism or speed. He was running stride for stride down the field with both Zachariah Branch and Jeremy Bell, which again are two of the faster, more explosive receivers, players in general, on the Georgia football team this year. And he was stride for stride with them. It took absolutely perfect throws and two ridiculous catches for them to complete those passes. And yes, they made those catches, but Janelle made it hard on them, right? So I was very much encouraged by that. I know, yeah, okay, gave him the completions. Okay. One of them, like he was there and his arm, he put his arm up to make a play on the ball, and literally the ball, you see the replay on the big screen, the ball goes like right here. I mean, we're talking inches, man. So I don't want to say all the questions have been answered there because we got to see it on the field against real competition in the SEC. But I was encouraged by what I saw from Janelle in coverage this spring. Now, we got to see him do on the field, right? But I don't have as many questions as maybe I did coming into the spring. So I'm still very, very, very high on Janelle. And I do expect him to be the guy to open the season as the starter at start. That'd be my expectation right now. But again, kind of Corey Thomas, I don't think he has a firm lock on that position. I do think that there is a window for a couple other guys to potentially move into that spot, at least push Janelle. And one of those guys to watch is a guy that's now been in the system for a couple years, and that's Kyron Jones, who I really like him too. I think he's also a guy that is a true prototype, a big-time fit for us at the star position at 6 foot, 205 pounds. And he's a Charlotte kid. And if you remember this guy coming out of high school, he was a running back. Like that was primarily what he did at high school. And he played both ways from time to on his high school team. And a lot of guys do that. But running back was really like his primary position at the high school level. But we didn't recruit him as a running back. We recruited him as a DB. And other schools were recruiting him as a running back. But we were able to get him on our commit list because we were selling him on playing DB and being a fit for us at the star position, a position where, again, it's really hard to find those type of bodies, and he is one of those guys. So I think Kyron has potential to be a really good star for Georgia. Hasn't had a lot of opportunities at this point in his career, but I do think the skill set is there, and I think he's going to be in this competition. He did some good things from the spring, got a few reps here and there with the ones, based on my understanding. But, yeah, I think the window's open there, and if he has a strong showing this fall, like he could certainly push Janelle there. And then the other guy I mentioned with the safety position is UAB transfer Adrian Maddox. Yes, he did get some reps at the safety position, but most of the snaps I saw him get were at star, much more so than at safety. And with his physicality, I do think that's probably a better fit for him, although he certainly could play either one of those positions. And the thing about Janelle, too, is Janelle could also play safety. It's about getting your best five on the field, right? Like maybe you should include Janelle in that safety conversation because in high school, that's what he played. He played safety. We kind of just recruited him as a star. So he's done some cross-training, and maybe in year 3, now he's gotten more comfortable with playing that star position. You feel more comfortable maybe cross-training him a little bit more at safety, potentially. So that's a thought there. But when you look at the star position, another name you have to factor in here. Now, he's not going to be a full-time star, but Chris Cole is a guy situationally that is going to play that position at times. When we're playing teams that are going heavy personnel, 12 personnel, trying to run the football, he's a guy with his size and athleticism combination, which is off the freaking charts, that is a great fit there. Like when we played him in that role at times last year against Texas, he was a big part of third downs of taking Gunnar Helm out of certainly that first game in Austin. So he'll probably play out there situationally as well. He's just not going to be an every down star defender. He's a guy that's going to be a versatile player for us on defense, but I do think he'll see some snaps at star there as well. So those are the 3 spots defensively that I see some relatively wide open position battles, at least more open than other positions on the Georgia defense. Now, moving over to the offensive side of the football, there's not a ton here, guys. I think that offensively, we have a pretty good idea of who's going to start at most positions, but there are a few spots here where I think there's a somewhat of a question going into the fall. And the first one here is right guard. Now, coming into the spring, the guy that was working the majority of the reps with the number 1 offense was Daniel Calhoun, a redshirt freshman from Walton High School who started to generate some buzz during fall camp last year as a true freshman. But like with who we had last year, all the veterans we had with Tate Ratledge and Dylan Fairchild and Micah Morris, like there was just not really a role for him. But you heard some really good things. What I saw from him at fall camp last year was encouraging, promising. So it's like, okay, well, going to year 2, well, you lose Tate Ratledge, you lose Dylan Fairchild, yeah, Micah Morris returns, but one of those guard spots is wide open. So Daniel Calhoun, it's your job, right? And that was the thought coming into the spring. And he did some good things the first half of spring practice. But he got banged up about halfway through the spring and missed the second half of spring practice. And that opened the door for a couple other guys to step in and get a lot of reps to the number one offense and accelerate their development and also make their case to the coaching staff going into fall camp. So I do think Calhoun, again, is going to go into the fall as the presumptive starter, but like the positions on defense, it's a somewhat tenuous hold in that spot right now. I do think that position is open, but Calhoun's a big physical dude at the guard position, 6'6", 325 out of Walton High School. I do think this guy can give us a little more push than we got at times last year. And part of that was because like Tate and Dylan were both banged up, and Michael Morris was banged up too. All of our guards were banged up last year, and they just weren't able to play at the level that we've come accustomed to them playing at. But with the size and strength that Calhoun brings to the table, I think this guy is a true road grader at the guard position and give us a lot of movement there. It will be a big part of helping us kind of jumpstart our run game because it was not good enough last year, and we need to get that going. He'll be a big part of that if he wins a job. But again, missing the second half of the spring as a year two guy who's never started before, that opens the door for a couple other guys like Michael Uini, who's a guy who's also in the same class as Daniel Calhoun, that 2024 recruiting class. He's another big dude at the guard position at 6'7", 325, even slightly bigger than Calhoun himself. And he got a ton of reps. He was getting reps with the number one offense even when Calhoun was healthy. Then when he went down, when Calhoun goes down, then it's Uini jumping in, being the guy there at that guard position. And that really, really helped him have some opportunities to showcase his ability and kind of gain some traction going into fall camp. And then the other guy that I don't think you can completely forget about here, I don't expect him to start this season, at least to open the season, but Juan Gaston, true freshman, is a guy that was generating some buzz during the spring. And when Calhoun went down, that slid Michael Uini up to the number one guard position at right guard. And then it was Juan Gaston who was getting reps behind him, also working in at times with the number one offense. And that was somewhat surprising to me because Juan in high school was a tackle, and I thought that's what he would play at the college level. And I still think that he probably will long-term end up at tackle, but guard might be his quickest way to playing time as a true freshman. Then later in his career, when Monroe Freeling or Ernest Green end up moving on, you kick out to tackle, right? And he's the guy that, talking about big dudes at guard, he's bigger than either Uini or Calhoun. He's 6'7", 350. And one of the things that I was really encouraged by with Gaston coming into the spring was he reshaped his body. My big concern about Juan coming out of high school was that he had some bad weight, man. Like he was, like linemen are big, but there's big and then there's big, right? He just had some bad weight. This is what it is. But to his credit, he got to campus as an early enrollee, took to the strength program, took to the nutrition program, did what he had to do, and got his body in shape. Now, he still has some room to improve there, but what he looked like this spring compared to the end of last year as a high schooler, night and day. So that helps a lot, and that gives him a chance to at least have a fighting chance to be in this competition during fall camp. So I don't expect him to be the guy, but he was getting reps with the number one offense during the spring, has a high degree of potential, maybe a higher ceiling than either Calhoun or Uini. He's just a little younger, right? So Calhoun's the guy I would project right now to be that guy at right guard, but the door is open for Uini. The door is also open there for Gaston as well. And then let's go to slot receiver here. Now, this is an interesting position. I know a lot of people just look at Zachariah Branch coming from USC and like, okay, he's our starter. He's the guy at the slot. And I get that because you don't spend the money that you spent on Zachariah Branch to bring him in and not play the guy, right? Okay, that's a fair way to look at it. But if you go back to the spring and you look at G-Day, to open the scrimmage, to open G-Day, Zachariah Branch was not on the field with the number one offense as the starter at that slot position. It was actually Dylan Bell, who hasn't played much slot in his career. He's a Z receiver. Then last year, because of necessity, was moved over to the X position because guys got suspended and just didn't have bodies to really play there, and he was our best option there. So he's not really played the slot much in his career, but I actually think he's a better fit there than he is on the outside. And Dylan's a guy, he's got 25 starts over the last 3 years at Georgia, going to year 4, 6'1", 210 pounds, has a little over 1,000 yards, exactly 1 yard over 1,000, 1,001 yards receiving in his career. Also has 265 rushing yards, 12 total touchdowns. And as I've said a couple times with Dylan throughout his career, I've always felt that he's got more of a running back body than a receiver body. And one of the things that Dylan brings to the table is his ability to pick up yards after the catch, right? Because he's also played some running back for us and got some reps at running back this spring, by the way. Let's not forget about that. So I like him in the slot because you run some RPO glance routes with him, you get him a free release, you get him the ball in space and let him go to work. I think that's where Dylan Bell can absolutely excel in the Georgia offense. And again, he opened G-Day as the starter at slot. But saying that, Zachariah Branch did work in very liberally with the number 1 offense at that slot position. The reality is they're both going to play. They're both going to play a lot of snaps for Georgia in the slot. It's just a matter of who opens the season as the starter there. And Zachariah Branch has got a legit shot, even though he didn't open G-Day as the starter. Maybe that's because, it's G-Day. You give the nod to Dylan Bell because he's been in the system for a while. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe Zachariah Branch still learning the offense. You feel more comfortable with Dylan. Obviously, probably a combination of all those things. But Dylan also, having played a variety of other positions at receiver for Georgia, other receiver positions, can also kick out and play Z-Force. Can play X-Force if we need to. Can play running back for us. Can do some H-back stuff for us situationally. There's a variety of things that he can do for us. So there's certainly a shot that Zachariah Branch could be the starter for Georgia to open the season at the slot position. But honestly, guys, I really don't even care who it is to open the season as a starter because they're both going to play. They're both going to play a lot. I have no question about that. So it's just a matter of who trots out there first with the number 1 offense. I would still put my money right now on Dylan Bell, but Branch got a shot. He's got a shot because Dylan can be used in a variety of other ways as well. All right, the last one here, guys. Now I saved this one for last because it's a little different than the other positions I just ran through. So the other ones we just ran through, we're looking at who might start for Georgia at those positions. Who's going to win the battle to be the starter at cornerback, at safety, at star, at right guard, at slot receiver. If you look at running back, I think it's pretty clear that Nate Frazier is going to be RB1 for Georgia. That's just how it's going to be. It was very clear this spring. He was the guy for Georgia at the running back position. In fact, G-Day, we didn't even give him that many snaps because we know we have in Nate Frazier. He was our leading rusher last year. As a true freshman, flashed some really high-level potential, and I think this guy's future is incredibly bright at Georgia. I think he's going to have a huge sophomore year for the Dogs in 2025. So I feel good saying that. Feel very comfortable and confident there. My question about running back is not who's going to start, it's who's going to be that primary backup, that 1-2 punch. Who's going to be RB2 for Georgia? That is more intriguing to me coming into the spring than who's going to be running back 1. It's going to be Nate Frazier, right? So if you look at the candidates to be that Robin to Nate Frazier's Batman, so to speak, I think you've got Illinois transfer Josh McCray, obviously in the battle there. Now, we haven't seen him at Georgia. He was a spring transfer portal window guy, a kind of a depth piece, but he's a guy that has been productive when healthy in his career. Led Illinois in rushing last year. First couple years of his career at Illinois were just completely marred by injury. It's unfortunate, but he had a relatively healthy year last year and was productive. I love this guy. I talked about him earlier in the week. And go back and watch an episode where I broke down his game in more detail. But not the fastest guy, but a big back at 6 foot, about 235, 240 pounds. Really good feet, good vision, good contact balance. I think right now I would project him, even though he hasn't practiced one single time with Georgia, which is what makes this a little bit of a stretch. But based off what I know of Josh McCray and some of the uncertainty around the other candidates pushing to be that running back 2, I would say tentatively Josh McCray would be my bet right now to be running back 2 behind Nate Frazier. But that's not a done deal. He's got to go out and earn that this spring or this fall. And Roderick Robinson is a guy that's now going into year 3 at Georgia who is going to be in the thick of that battle. Now, Rod's career has not exactly gone the way he wanted it to through the first 2 years in Athens. Year 1, he got some serious run the first couple games of the year, but then had a high ankle sprain like basically everybody else on the team in 2023 and missed the rest of the regular season, didn't come back until the Orange Bowl against Florida State. And I thought he did some really good things. I thought he reshaped his body, looked like he was in better shape, looked like he was moving better than ever before in that game against Florida State, and that was very encouraging to me and gave me a lot of hope for him and what he could be in 2024. But then he got banged up in fall camp, was banged up a little bit in the spring. Then he looks like he's about to get healthy, gets banged up again, and missed space the entire year, guys. He had a grand total of 3 yards rushing for Georgia last year on 4 carries. Had a couple of receptions he made. Had a big one there late in the Georgia Tech game. I think we were down 27-13 at that time, and we were trying to come back with under 6 minutes left after Tech had just gone up 2 scores. And had a nice catch there that kind of kept that drive going, but didn't play hardly at all last year, guys. That's the reality. He just barely played last year. So he's coming off of a couple of pretty serious injuries. And that's what makes him an unknown for me. Rod is similar to McCray. He's a big guy, 6'1", 235, a big dude who's not incredibly fast in a straight line, fast enough, but has good feet, like Josh McCray. I see a lot of similarities there. But I just don't know what to expect from Rod. I've seen videos of him, like a lot of you have on social media this summer, of him working out on his own, doing some stuff, running up hills. And that was great, man. That's awesome. But that's different from strapping on the pads and going against SEC opponents, right? I don't know what that looks like. And I've seen it so many times in recent history with Georgia, guys at the running back position coming off of injuries that year one, when they get back on the field and are cleared to play, they're just not quite what they were pre-injury, at least not right away. You go back to, I know it was a while ago now, but you go back to like the 2016 season. God, it's almost a decade ago. That's a crazy thing, man. Crazy. But Nick Chubb coming back from 2015, that horrific injury in 2015. In 2016, he comes back miraculously and is cleared to play and did some great things for Georgia, but clearly wasn't the same Chubb that we saw pre-injury, and not the same guy that he was in 2017 when he was another year removed from the injury, right? And last year you saw with Branson Robinson, kind of the same thing. It's like Branson coming off a number of injuries, tough injuries, was cleared. I was hopeful that he would be able to give us something last year, but he just wasn't the same guy. And I'm hopeful that he'll be that, and now a further year removed from the injury, will be that guy for Georgia State. I really wish him the best, absolutely, at Georgia State this year, but last year he just wasn't that guy coming off injury. So I'm hesitant with Rod. I'm hopeful, but I'm hesitant based off recent history here with Georgia. But he does have more experience in the Georgia system. Even though he hasn't been playing, he's been in meeting rooms. He knows our terminology. He knows the offense better than McCray does. So there's that. I think he's at least going to be in the conversation. We'll just see like what version of Rod do we get this fall. And then the other guy, kind of the wild card here, that generated a ton of buzz really all spring long, was true freshman Bo Walker, 5'10", 210 pounds. This guy is going to play. He is going to play. The only question for me this year for Bo Walker is how much does he play? He's going to play real meaningful snaps for Georgia. I believe that, guys. I really, really do. I think he earned that this spring. I think he's going to further solidify that role in the fall. The only question I have is like, can he some way work himself into that number 2 role? I think the odds are probably no right now. That's why you bring in a guy like Josh McCray. You got Rod Robinson as well. But I do think that Bo's going to play. I really do. I think he's going to help us. And look, even though I don't think he's going to be a running back 2, with what he did in the spring as an early enrollee, if he continues that development and maybe takes it to another level this fall, I'm not going to completely discount the possibility that Bo Walker could some way, somehow find himself as that number 2 guy. Maybe not right away to open the season, but at some point in the year. That's certainly within the realm of possibility. Really high potential. Another guy that doesn't have the fastest straight line speed, but all the other traits this guy has in terms of vision and ability to get skinny through a hole, make people missing a hole, make people missing space, great feet, contact balance, running behind his pads, all those things you want to see in running backs. All those other things he does at an extremely high level. So I love Bo Walker. I think he's going to play for Georgia. I just don't know if I'm ready to say that he's going to be RB2 coming out of the fall. But you never know, man. I would have told you coming in the spring that he would have done what he did this spring. So I'm not going to say the guy can't do it. I'm just not going to say that. So there you go, guys. That is my take on Georgia's biggest position battles heading into fall camp. And of course, we'll have you guys covered throughout the totality of fall camp with how these position battles are shaping up. So keep on coming back for more. If you haven't already and you're a diehard Georgia fan, go ahead, subscribe right now, turn those notifications on. And if you enjoyed today's video, please like, comment, let me know what position battles are you watching this spring. But thank you guys for being here. I greatly appreciate all your support. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs!
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.